but we've just looked in our WhatsApp chat. Set to become Premier's highest played player. He's on the 26-year-old is currently on £700,000 at Montpellier, but he's reportedly going to be paid £1 million to play for Bath. Hello, and in the week that Jamie Roberts returns to Wales with the Dragons, Newcastle sign Fusa, Dougie Fife becomes a free jack, and the Premiership Rugby returns this week. And welcome to the Ruck and Maul podcast. It's just Joe and I this week. Joe's sunning himself up in Berkhamsted, and I'm sunning myself up in the middle of France. It's currently 34 degrees. I'm currently very hot. So let's get straight into the podcast. How you doing, Joe? Anyway, you're right.
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Shielding inside a little bit, to be honest, with this sun.
Yeah,
no garden sitting, not like the acres that you've got.
Oh, absolutely. We had a little walk around the outside perimeter today. Oh, very, very hot. 15 minutes, absolutely burnt to a crisp I was. Yeah, so less about our French escapades. Currently, our colleague, Harry Berryman, is currently driving and ploughing his way through the top of northern France to get home. So he'll be back in time to record our Premiership podcast on Wednesday, which we'll talk about later on. But anyway, on this episode of the Ruck and Maul podcast, we've got the Hurricanes put themselves in contention, but the Crusaders are crowned champions of Super Rugby Aotearoa in Christchurch. And over in Super Rugby AU, it turns out you can beat the Brumbies, and the Waratahs destroy the Reds. We're also going to go through our players of the week and discuss our back three in the Lions of 15 to complete our first sort of set of those 15s. But let's start on Saturday in Super Rugby Aotearoa with the Hurricanes versus the Chiefs. Hurricanes, as we talked about on Friday's pod, needed to do everything they needed to do. Got a bonus point win against the Chiefs, 31-12. I want to start with this. What are your thoughts on this, Joe, as a centre? Peter Umunga-Jensen, 2 tries. Is he in the frame to be the next in New Zealand 13?
Quite, it's a big question, that, isn't it? I've been so impressed with him. He's what I want to be as a 13. He's a big boy. He can tackle, but he hits amazing lines and he breaks the gain line pretty much every time he gets it. But he's just, one of the things I really like with him is he's smart. When he can see the gaps before they really open, and where he really makes his impact is where he runs onto the ball sometimes straight from 9, sometimes from whoever's inside him, and he just runs with such ferocity. And always, importantly for those young kids watching in, he's always running at arms and at shoulders, not at bodies, and that's why he breaks the line so often. But yeah, I've just been so impressed with him. But that is a huge question. There's a lot of very good 13s in New Zealand. There's a lot of very good people in every position. But the question that we've been asking for the majority of this Aotearoa tournament is whether that's where Ioane should be playing for the All Blacks. And I think it's slightly different. I think Ioane plays probably slightly differently to Umunga-Jensen, and that he's less of a complete battering ram. He's more of a running around the corner, creating the offload and isolating the outside shoulder. So it's slightly different. I think Umunga-Jensen's probably still a little bit too young to tell. He's certainly got a future. If he carries on the way he's going, the amount of games he's played so far and the amount of tries he's scored, he's had a huge impact. So I think you've probably just got to wait a little bit longer to see if he continues this and keeps it up. But certainly if the Hurricanes season weren't pretty much over now, and there are more games to play and Laumape was fit, certainly your best 2 centres now for the Hurricanes are Laumape and Umunga-Jensen. They've got to be probably the first 2 people on your team. I think Arso's now kind of out of that team, really. He's back in just through injury to Laumape, but I've just been so impressed with Umunga-Jensen.
I was going to say, like you said about his age, like he's 22 and Rico Ioane is only 23, which kind of shows that how like they not pull the trigger, because Ioane's been class for years when he broke onto the scene as a 20-year-old. But I think if you've got a guy in there that can do like bits and bobs, like Ioane sort of they do the same. I'd say Ioane's got a bit more pace, but I'd say defensively, Umunga-Jensen's probably got a little bit in there. You've obviously got Brandon Enor at the Crusaders that had again got on the score sheet from basically let's talk about that very quickly. Actually, they're 2 very similar tries actually from the Umunga Jensen first one where he's cut the whole line. It's a really flat ball straight for the hole, and then basically, does exactly the same thing in the Crusaders game. Hits that line really hard in between two defenders and absolutely splits it open. But yeah, I'd definitely consider him, putting him in the picture. I think, yeah, he's been one of the breakout players of this tournament, and in a Hurricanes team that started slowly, have actually been the informed team in this competition. Overall, I've only seen the games on highlights because I was travelling at the time. But Hurricanes look really good. Garner Basham had a good performance at 10. It seemed good pace on the ball. Anything particularly that the Hurricanes have done differently from other weeks, maybe?
Not massively, I don't think. I think Chiefs are up to their old tricks of not being as organised defensively as they could be, coughing up ball a couple of times when they didn't need to. And Hurricanes were just doing well what they have done well throughout the last few weeks. So the likes of Sarve and Duplessis Griffey were really strong, and they were making breaks. But they were using Houston quite well as well. But I think importantly, and you mentioned it, Garden Batchup had quite a good game, and he's not the star. He's not one of the star players at the Hurricanes. He's not had amazing performances in this tournament. It's been the boys of Barrett and Amanga Jensen and a few others that have played really, really well. But he was a little bit higher, a little bit better than he has been, and he was creating more gaps for his team, which can only result in tries and result in success. So Amanga Jensen playing well, Covers Van Wyk had a good game. There weren't many poor performances, really. I don't think off the top of my head from the Hurricanes, and the Chiefs just were kind of what we're used to seeing now the last few weeks, just not really at the races.
Yeah, from like I say, I got the snapshot of it. They didn't look particularly just in the game. Hurricanes from the sort of the quick highlights, they looked like they were playing with a lot of pace. There were some great offloads. I think it's when Dane Coles goes in the corner, or where they've basically broken the line, it goes through the hands and etc. That was really, really nice. There were some really good passes of players. I've kind of maybe undersold Goosen a little bit. As I say, I've probably not made an assumption about the guy before I've really seen him play, but lovely break down the wings. Clearly got a lot of gas. Nice for Van Wyk to come in and get a try on departing before he moves to Leicester at the end of this competition. But yeah, just quickly on the Chiefs, positives for them is their driving maul. They scored off 2 driving mauls. But really, I don't particularly want to say anything much more on them because we're just going to end up repeating ourselves. It's not been a great competition. Whatever Super Rugby looks like next year, whether they're going to go trans-Tasman, whether they're going to have a Japanese, whatever. The Chiefs need to come back and just have a look, review. It's been a fantastic competition. Obviously, we've still got 1 week to go, but it's the end of the road for the Chiefs. Just quickly on them, best player for the Chiefs for them?
What, in their season or yesterday?
No, just general, or yesterday, or whatever. However you want to answer that question, just to sort of close them off, because we're not going to see them next week.
Yeah, it's quite tough, really, to say. They've not really had any complete standouts. Mackenzie has been around and about, here and there, but he's not been at his best. Boshier has been good when he's played, but he obviously wasn't playing yesterday. So Akula's been pretty good. Arcoy, I think I've been impressed with him in the second row. But I think that kind of sums it up for their tournament for them. Nobody has really stood out. For every other team, you can pick out at least probably 2 or 3 that have had really good tournaments and have impacted games, and they haven't really had anyone do that for them, which is probably one of their major downfalls. But I think really what happened with the Chiefs is they didn't start well, and then they couldn't get out of the pressure they were then under, because they were under pressure from the word go, just with the nature of the tournament, but also the fact that before the tournament started, Gatland was named as the best coach ever, which, so everyone's talking about, wow, the Chiefs, now they've got this coach, surely they're going to be amazing. They lose their first game. They lose their first couple of games. Well, the first game against the Highlanders, which they were all expected to win because we all wrote the Highlanders off. I think they were just under a huge amount of pressure that they just never were able to deal with. And when it came to yesterday, last game, looking for a win, playing away at the Hurricanes, you've got to do something special to get there. And they're not even anywhere close to special at the moment. So it's tough because they are a good team. They've got good players, but I think they've just succumbed to that pressure and weren't able to get out of it. And that is difficult to do.
Yeah.
you see teams all through sport, all through kind of history, really, some great teams that then just fail under the weight of their own expectations. So a lot of people are saying, like, is this an indictment of Gatland? Should he still be coaching the Lions? But it's just really a difficult situation that they've struggled to get out of. And I'm sure they will bounce back from this. Again, we've said it before, it's an extremely difficult tournament. The other four that you've got to play are all, especially with the Highlanders playing the way they did this year, there really, really aren't any easy games at all. Every game is a final. So it's just one of those from the Chiefs, unfortunately.
Yeah, back to the drawing board. They've got Scott. I thought Sean Wainui, who's come across from the Crusaders, just kind of shows ridiculously how much the Crusaders actually have, that they have him to go, oh yeah, off you go. Like I thought he was very good for them in the back lines. But they've got some really good young players coming through. So if I was a Chiefs fan, I'd just be pretty optimistic. I think if you're realistically going to play, I don't see Super Rugby Aotearoa continuing, especially in 5 teams. I think it's far too. It's been a fantastic product, and it's been brilliant during the time of coronavirus and people needing sport. And obviously New Zealand have done particularly well with that, and they should be praised as a nation from how well they've done with that. And actually us being in the UK and loving our rugby, and that's what we've had. It's been the quality's been really there. But yeah, the Chiefs just probably needs to go back to the drawing board on that one. So as I say, Super Rugby Aotearoa, the champions are crowned. The Crusaders did what they needed to do in Crusaders style. 32-22 was it in the end?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But again, the Highlanders were in the game for the majority. I think I clocked it. I think they only really broke clear at about 74 minutes on the clock, so they were well in the game, and they're actually behind for long parts of it. So credit to the Highlanders there. They obviously Frizzell has been flipping quality for them at 6. Has cut an absolutely beautiful line. Jonah Nareki's interception was good. It's the commentators I saw on the highlights were saying it's the 2 Fijians. It's Sevu Reece versus Jonah Nareki. I was like, one of them plays for New Zealand. the debate around that. Anyway, we'll leave that. But yeah, I want to just let's start with the sort of not the shock or like a missing an open goal, but do you feel a bit sorry for Bryn Hall?
God, I mean, he must have just thought he was away, thought it was in the clear, and then was it Josh Mackay? Comes in to tackle?
Pace.
And the commentators were saying didn't expect that gas from him. But it's one of those where I've had it happen to me before, and it's the most gutting thing in the world. You're about to score, you're through, and they tackle you in such a way that they wrap their hands around your front body and knock the ball out of your hands. There's nothing you can do about that as a ball carrier. You can't do anything about it. So it's just good tackling and good cover defence from Mackay, but absolutely gutting. Luckily, it didn't matter. In the end, they went away and won anyway. But I think the other thing was as well, he was subbed immediately afterwards. What a way to finish your game.
Oh, that didn't come across in the highlights. So yeah,
after that.
But yeah, I just from again the point of the Crusaders, they are just that juggernaut, and I think for the first time, really, it was like watching the highlights of Crusaders from the traditional Super Rugby back when they played the Highlanders way earlier in the year, and it was sunny day out in Christchurch, and they just ran from deep, brilliant offloads. I think it's the Bridge second try where Romano's come off the bench, lovely inside offload from a second row that can do that. It's just great, especially as he's getting on a bit, can still pull that out the bag. It's just quality from him. Richie Mwanga, again, is just, for me, I love him. He is one of my favourite players in the world right now. He's certainly, for me, the best 10 in the world. Just glides, he's effortless, he's so quick as well. And then nice, handsome Will Jordan, who looked like he had a good game, obviously over 100 metres again. And when you're running over 100 metres, obviously at fullback, you're going to have the ball and you've got to carry a lot more. But from deep, but yeah, to get himself back on there was good. Nice to see George Bridge, who's had a relatively quiet Super Rugby Aotearoa. I'd say he's maybe been overshadowed by Sevu Reece killing it on the wing. But yeah, anything else on the Crusaders before the Highlanders?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. Obviously, I was supporting the Highlanders because I really wanted it to go to the final weekend and to make it a real contest between the Crusaders and the Blues next week, which I'm sure it still will be, but would have been even more so had they not had the title sealed just yet. But it was an interesting game in that I probably would have said what I was thinking at the time. Prior to 60 minutes, the Highlanders was still winning, but the Crusaders were the better. You'd say they were the better team, but were kind of the products of their own downfall. They would get into good positions, and then they'd either knock it on, or they'd give away an interception, or they'd lose the ball on the floor, which is obviously good work from the Highlanders, but it's still a ball lost from the Crusaders. I would have said that they almost would have lost it for themselves, and then it hit 60 minutes, and they did what they've always done. It's quite funny. The commentators brought up stats on about 50 to 55 minutes about what percentage of points scored for both teams in the different phases of the game, and Crusaders score before this game, and obviously that's probably gone up now. They score 39%, so 40% of all their points in between 61 and 80 minutes.
Wow.
So that's something we kind of all knew, but we didn't really know the stats behind it. So they said that probably about 55 minutes they pulled up that stat. And on 61 minutes, they score that first of their sort of breakaway tries, and then they score again immediately after that. So it went from, and I was absolutely a little bit gutted. They're good tries, but I was a little bit gutted, sat there watching this, just thinking, oh, the Highlanders are still in the game. They've got to 60 minutes, and they've still got they're still a score ahead. And then Crusaders score twice straight after one another, and you're like, well, crap, that's the game over then.
Yeah.
Tournament done. 15 minutes. Luckily, the Highlanders still stayed in it and still kept it interesting. But and you said about George Bridge, he scored 2 tries, but really both of them were kind of just finishing off backline moves. Several Reece, again, was just everywhere. He reminds me a bit of Jack Noel in that he pops up all over the park, and he takes the ball from scrum half, or sometimes even from the ruck, and he always seems to break tackles, and he just creates tries for other people. So even though he's not scoring them, he's creating them. Although I did another stat that was pulled up. George Bridge, I think he was something like, before he scored they pulled this up before he scored his first try. He had scored something like 35 tries for the Crusaders, and it's something like 5th on their all-time top try scorers.
Jesus.
I don't know how many he was away from the people above him. Dan Carter was one of those, but he obviously then scored 2 tries. So fairly quiet from Bridge, but he still managed to pop up and score, which I suppose is an art in and of itself. But yeah, the Highlanders were brilliant, battled all day. You could tell that the Crusaders probably were going to run away with it at some stage, just because of the quality that they had, and they were bullying the Highlanders, but the Highlanders just stuck with it. Frizzell was quality, as you said, battling all day long. Aaron Smith was really, really good in the pace and the energy that he put into the game, and the quality of passing that he had. Whenever there was a turnover, Smith turned it into something. It wasn't just comfortable saying, okay, we've got the ball, we can build something. We're going to do something with it immediately, and we're going to make some meters, which I'm sure is the reason the Highlanders' attack is so successful.
He's had a massive resurgence, hasn't he, really? Like, there was talks after the World Cup, like whether, and there's a thing in, I don't know if anyone's seen this, but in Twitter, Aaron likes to sort of answer questions on Twitter, and I think that's really, really good. I think it's that way of social interaction is really good, and kind of wish more players did that in a quite a nice environment. And they were like, which 10 would you like to play inside of? And he said Finn Russell. And obviously Finn Russell's currently at Racing 92, who've currently got Curtly Beale in the back line as well, and some other ridiculous talents over there. So, I mean,
imagine that.
Cash, that's a hint. Racing, if you're listening, obviously you guys do. Please, yeah. Well, there you go. We could see him in the Northern Hemisphere, but anyway, he's in his 30s now, early 30s. Obviously, he's put that sort of the controversy of the airport debacle behind him. That was a while ago, lad. But he's been definitely the best 9 by an absolute country mile. Like, Finney Christie's been great for the Blues, and we talked about him as well, and Bryn Hall and Sam Knock as well. But for me, and TJ as well, yeah, we could do it, but he's had that a bit above it, and then they're talking about maybe not displacing him, but he's still, if I was playing a test match tomorrow, Aaron Smith is one of the first people you're going to put in that team sheet.
Yeah. I mean, he does play a slightly different role, and he's probably more visible with the Highlanders than he is with the All Blacks, because he has to play that role of bringing the team up with him when he plays with the Highlanders, and he's the role of the man. Whereas in the All Blacks, you've got 15 of them, and all he's really there to do is give quick ball to the very, very good players he's got outside of him to do something with it. So he plays a slightly different role, but yeah, very, very impressed with him. I really like the way he kind of owns that responsibility and owns that role. But one of the other things I thought was really good is how he talks to the referee. He's really good at that, and he's really kind of eloquent and seems like a nice enough bloke. I mean, it's difficult to really tell that, but there was one incident, and we probably should mention it just for what happened anyway, with Tomkinson and Ollie Yager. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't come up, so you'll have to tell me about it, yeah.
So Ollie Yager, I think he'd only just come on off the bench, Irish-born prop. There was, I think somebody carried inside of him. I think it was Waratahs went into a tackle, went down. Obviously, we're about to form a ruck. Ollie Yager's kind of running an outside line, supporting him in case the offload comes. And Tomkinson comes in ready to tackle Yager should the offload go away. But Waratahs is tackled and he goes to the ground. Tomkinson and Yager are about to collide. So Tomkinson sort of like braces himself. And in doing so, shoulder barges Yager in the chin. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if he was knocked out or not, but he was down on the floor for a very long time, and he went off on a stretcher with stuff all around his neck. So which is obviously not great, and we hope that he's all right. But a difficult situation where Tomkinson was in the wrong, and it was a yellow card, which was right. But obviously he's done some harm to Yager. But Smith just spoke really well to the referee. I think from that break, the Crusaders scored anyway. So they were down at the end of the pitch looking at it on the TMO. And Smith comes up to the referee and he's just asking what happened. And he explains it fully, the situation that's happened. And Smith goes, yep, okay, thanks, sir. And just walks away again.
Nice.
And yes, it is a kind of clear-cut situation, but you get it all the time where, and it happens, it's happened a few times in this game, you get it every time where a situation like that happens where a player asks the referee a question. It's never enough for them to just have the answer. They've always got to have another quip in, which although they still do it kind of gentlemanly, they still do it amicably. I'd rather that wasn't there. I'd rather you just let the referee get on with it. And Smith did that, which I thought was really good to see. But yeah, just a very, very good player.
Yeah, you kind of, it's such an important thing because from when we've played rugby, like obviously I've been on both sides, like refereeing, but also being a captain, and versus experience being my vice captain of how not chill I can sometimes be. But as a referee, like it wouldn't be biased, but if you had a captain that would cut you and shout, or you'd have multiple people coming up and shouting at you, you are in the mind, your mindset does go, I'm not going to give as many penalties here, or not saying that I deliberately did it and it cost teams games, anything like that at all. But it was the fact that it does get in your head a little bit that you if you're constantly getting screamed and shouted at and like F this, F that, how's that a penalty? Like it does get in your head. And most of the time in rugby, it's really good. But yeah, you want guys like Smith doing stuff like that. But just finishing off on the Highlanders, really, I've been obviously there's still one game to go, so we won't go too much more on Super Rugby Aotearoa. Sort of give our final thoughts. We've got all four of us back together. But yeah, as I say, I really like the Highlanders. I've really managed to get in behind them. They've got some really, really exciting players that we've talked about. And they've got a nice, bright future ahead of them. The future's definitely bright down there in the south of New Zealand. So great job for them. They stuck in the game. But again, the champions are the champions at the end of the day. And yeah, there you go. So Crusaders are the champions in Super Rugby Aotearoa. But in Super Rugby AU, flipping heck, we've got a game on. We've got a tournament on. I put a post together this week and said, can anyone beat the Brumbies? Only bloody turns out the Reds can beat the Brumbies. Flipping heck. 30.12. I couldn't believe it. They were in the pouring down rain of, I'm not particularly sure where they were playing because obviously due to Melbourne currently being locked down due to coronavirus and stuff, the Rebels are dotted around. So that's my bad for not knowing exactly where they were playing. But the Rebels came out absolutely gun-ho firing, chucked the ball around. Reece Hodge goes in the corner after 2 minutes, and you're like, oh, hello, what's going on here? And then the Brumbies sort of go through their phases, and then they go for a kick through. It's come off the Rebel. It's come off, I can't remember, the 13 for the Rebels. Corin Betty's kicked the ball 50 metres. Grubber kicked it again. Looks like he's come inside. Andy Muirhead, bless him's fumbled it. And then Corin Becky just picks it up, and you think anyone in that situation is just going to drop. He's literally on the line, like he could fall over the line. But no, just always team first. Simple option is to pass inside, and they're well ahead by that point. They're like 13 minutes in, and they're already well clear, and they thoroughly deserve the win. Like the Brumbies we obviously talked about their maul and stuff, and their effective drive, and Matt Phillip for the Rebels was brilliant about stopping that. And once you stop their maul, and if you come at the Brumbies hard, they couldn't get in the game. And the Brumbies didn't kick enough. In the pouring rain, the sort of your game plan should be, you might not be able to pass the ball enough. And actually the skill set of the Rebels were there that they could play it. And I'll talk about their attack in a minute, which I was really impressed by. But the Brumbies, they just didn't kick enough. In the sense they need the Australia trialing the 50-22 rule, where you can kick the ball as long as you're outside the 22. If it bounces inside their 20 and it rolls out, it's your ball. And you think they've got a line out like that. That is literally a rule designed to make the Brumbies unstoppable. But they weren't kicking enough in behind the Rebels. The Rebels pressed hugely up in defence, and then attack. Something really different that we haven't really seen for a while is how wide the pass was from Lemeki at 9 to, I can't remember who he was off the top of my head, at 10. It was not Tamur, because Tamur was playing 12 in that game. But it was about 20 metres a pass. Every ruck, 20 metres. So they're straight away, you're at the fourth defender for the Brumbies. When Joe and I coach and stuff, we're sort of telling our kids to hit the second or third defender. But they're hitting the fourth defender out. So all the concertinas of people going around the ruck was not doing anything. And that's where the Rebels were hitting through. Yeah, thoroughly deserved the win. It was a really, really good game. Brumbies got themselves a couple of tries again off their maul. Powell nicked one off Falau Faliango, which is quite funny. Foul looks like he's going to go inside, and Powell nicks it off and goes in the corner. But yeah, Rebels won 2 games in a row where they might not have done. They're well in it.
How many games are left? There's still, is it what, about halfway?
That was round 6, so they've got four left. No.
Yeah, I think yeah. It's the same length as Aotearoa.
Yeah, same length as Aotearoa. So they're on. Brumbies obviously dropped points, and we'll talk about the Reds in a moment, dropping points. Issa Nasarani, who's the Wallabies 8 that's come back, and I'm going to do a piece about number 8s in the week, so interact that on social media. But he's come back, and flipping out, that boy can carry. Literally up the jumper, nothing too fancy. Doesn't really put a lot of footwork in there. That's probably one bit of his game he could look to develop. He doesn't really put his footwork in, but when you're flipping 6'3" and you're an absolute machine, hammering home, yeah, he looks the real deal. He's made a big difference for the Rebels coming back last 2 games. So, yes, it's well open in Super Rugby AU. And the last game, obviously, to talk about is the Waratahs. I could not believe when I think I was in a service station at some point in the middle of nowhere, in rural France, and I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, the Waratahs are 45-12. Like, what? I just could not get over that, as we literally said on Friday. Oh, the Waratahs are nowhere near as good as the Reds.
45-12.
And yeah, like half an hour in the game, they're like 30-0 up. But again, that comes from the Reds were really weak in defence. Like the Waratahs again tapped wide, they attacked the fringes, they were at pace. I think it was Ralston on the wing, no Ramson, sorry, on the wing that broke through, and he's got 2 tries. But Jake Gordon, who hadn't played, what a start from him! He's got a hat trick, and they weren't just like here's the ball, Jake, fall over the line. They were really well made and good ball back inside and finishing off. Like he was one of the players of the week in that regard. But yeah, this competition's been certainly blown over. It's been the Super Rugby AU teams have struggled for years in the traditional Super Rugby format. Ever really since the Waratahs won it in 2014 was the last time that Australia really had a competitive side. But in a country where rugby union is 6th, we participated and watched. This is a really, really good product now. And actually, we mentioned earlier that Super Rugby Aotearoa might not happen again, whether they might flip to maybe doing an extended Mitre 10 Cup or whatever. But for me, in Australian Rugby Union, where you're that saturated with the content, make a small 8 league, 6 team, 5 teams, even do it short 10 weeks, bish bash bosh will be a really good product for them, because every game's been competitive and every team now is taking wins off each other. Like we've seen the Rebels 2 weeks in a row, they've got a win. We thought the Reds would bounce back after a loss to the Brumbies. They've been absolutely destroyed. As I say, it's a really great competition. I'm really excited. Obviously, with Aotearoa 1 week to go, Premiership's returning, but definitely still to keep an eye on Super Rugby AU. Let's go into
Australia, isn't it? Because they've had a lot of problems with their own internal affairs, but just with the quality of the Wallabies side as well, dropping significantly. So if this tournament is strong, well, that can only mean good things for Australia.
Yeah, 100%. I think with Australia need a reset they need to just go youth for the next 4 years until the next World Cup. And if that means for the next 2 years they play New Zealand and South Africa and England and Wales and Ireland and whoever and get beaten every game and they've dropped their ranking drops, but you've got to put people like Jordan Bataya, Hunter Basami, Harry Wilson, Tate McDermott, who I would say is that if we're sort of not knocking coaches, but the worst selection of the weekend goes to Brad Thorne and not starting Tate McDermott. Tate McDermott comes off the bench and the Reds score 2 tries. Like, that's the correlation. I don't understand why he was benched the last 2 weeks. But yeah, you've got players like that. You've got Powell, you've got Jack McGregor, even at the force, you've got Jack Maddox, you've got the Tom Wright, you've got Banks, like these young guys that are under 24, 25, just go with them and you might lose. But in the payoff in 4 years' time, where they haven't got the money of, and we use the example of Curtly Beale should have been at the Waratahs until October, but they've decided to let him go. But I don't think that's necessarily a negative. You keep the guys like Michael Hooper around and Alala Toa and these experienced guys in there just to keep the team ticking over. But go youth, Australia, just go youth. That's the way forward to go, because they've got some ridiculously good players.
Hope they stick around.
Let's part that Super Rugby then, and let's do just quickly Player of the Week, Joe, for you.
That's a big shout. I think I'm probably going to go Umunga Jensen again. I'm obviously slightly biased in the position that he plays, and that even though he's younger than me, I want to be him and the way he plays. So really impressed with him and the lines that he's been hitting. He's made such an impact when he's been on the starting team sheet for Hurricanes. And it could have been a time now when without Laumape, could have been a time where they were really struggling in the centre and struggling to get that go forward ball, but they found somebody young and fit and willing to fight that can do it in just the same way. So yeah, I've been really impressed with him.
Yeah, I was going to say he was going to be mine, so now I've got to go to my second. Yeah, class. Really, I really like him. It's been great to watch him play. No, I'll go Jake Gordon actually. I feel like we might be too heavy on Super Rugby Aotearoa sometimes. We don't give some of the AU teams as credit, but if you've got a guy that hasn't played Super Rugby AU in this competition because of injury, scoring a hat-trick is a massive achievement in a game of rugby. Like, yes, it's more common in the backs, and if a forward scores a hat-trick, you're like, flippin' heck. Like, the world's changing, but yeah, to score a hat-trick and some of the tries he finished, and he was absolute quality from what I saw of it.
Half as well.
Yeah.
It's a position where you're feeding other people the whole time.
And when Australia, as I said, I don't want to reiterate my point, but they've got so many good nines there now. Like, Will Genia was their superstar for so long, but he's another one that could potentially, again, I'm making an assumption after seeing him one game, he might be crap next week, but he's another one that just chucks his hat in the ring. You know, like, he's got a lot to offer. Great thing for him to get a hat trick. So Umunga Jensen and Jake Gordon will ask Johnny and Harry to contribute, and that can go in a post tomorrow. team of the week we'll put out as well. So interact with that on social media as well. That'll go up on Instagram and Twitter later on. If you're new to the podcast, we are doing at the end of each podcast, we're kind of doing a 15 of different players, etc. But the first one we sort of focus on is the Lions team. So the first test next year, who is going to be playing for the Lions? So we've done every position apart from the back three. So this is our team at the moment. So Mako, Jamie George, Sinclair, Maro Itoje, Alwyn Jones, Courtney Laws, Justin Tipperick, Bini Vinapola, Thomas Williams, Owen Farrell, and then Manu Tuolangi is at 12. And then the only Irish in contingent so far, Gary Ringrose, is at 13. So we're going to do the wings and fullback. Do you want to? Shall we start with fullback?
Can do. I think it's probably the most nailed on position, isn't it? In most people's minds, and I think it will be in Gatland's mind. So the first one that you've got to name is Stuart Hogg, isn't it? He's obviously it's a talking point, I know, but he's a big name. He's been involved with the Lions before. He probably would have been the starting Lions 15 if he wasn't knocked out, broken his nose or whatever it was by Conor Murray in that warm-up game when down in New Zealand. But has been a really consummate performer and one of Scotland's best players for the last few years.
Yeah, I think the move to Exeter has been really good for him, and he took a while to sort of get into speed, and I think he was maybe a bit under pressure at Exeter of like, we've got to see what Stuart Hogg's about. Oh my God, he hasn't scored a try. He's not run over 100 metres. Panic. And then I think it was Bath where he just ran through the entire team, and then I kind of sat there. I was like, there you go. Yeah. That's why they bought him. Like, he's an unbelievable player, and I still remember when he played in the Australian series, and we needed to fly off. I think it was they played against the Western Force, and Stuart Hogg played him. They put him at fly off, and his distribution skills in there were good, and I really like that. I think Alex Good, why Saracens have been so successful, is having that playmaker at 15. We've seen Bowden Barrett coming in at second playmaker, Damien McKenzie, etc. Geordie Barrett at the Hurricanes, brilliant in there. So he provides that role. He's quick. He was brilliant in the Six Nations again. I'm very keen for him to stay in there, not just because he's Scottish, and I think, if we don't put a Scot in, it's not the British and Irish Lions, but he deserves necessary to be in there. The only person that I could see that you might want to consider up there is maybe Liam Williams. I always remember the first time I ever watched Liam Williams, it was back in like 2010, I think. Might have been earlier in the LV Cup, and he's about 18, I think. And it was Scarlets versus Leicester. So it was proper, the proper second team's academies. So next to my mum. I'm on a name drop, but my mum played for England, one of the first international. So I kind of take what she was saying quite a lot in regards to rugby. And she said, point at Liam Williams and went, that bloke will never, ever play for Wales because he doesn't run properly. And that was when Liam Williams, it's obviously a development thing where he was quite bow-legged at the time. And he couldn't get maybe his necessary speed down. But obviously that's worked on because of SNC. And now he's a British and Irish Lion, even capped by the Welsh. So I always kind of take the mick out of my mum when I was like, oh, Liam Williams is starting for Wales again, mum. And she was like, oh, yeah. Well, I still don't think he should be, though. But he would be the only one, I think. He's been brilliant for Saracens. He's the only person, I think. I'm just thinking.
Well, yeah, no, I'd agree. The other 15s that you might potentially throw into the ring are Jordan Lama, and he's been good, but I don't think he's had the experience and had the time enough to be able to say he's going to be a starting line 15. He's got to be in the conversation, I think, and he might just get on the plane. And then the other one is Daly, but Daly I still see I think his best position is probably wing.
I agree.
I think he's been a good fullback for England, but I think he's more just holding in position for somebody else to come at the moment, just because I think we're slightly struggling for a real 15 in England. But I think definitely Hogg and Williams are your two big ones. Williams is another one that is almost poor because he could play on the wing.
Yeah. And I think actually when South Africa again will come out with they're gonna have their drive again. They're gonna have power on the corner. They're gonna play attritional, but they're also gonna play territory. Like Pollard in the World Cup, his kicking was on point, just so good in that point of view. And LaRue was at 15 for them, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. again, yeah, I thought it was great kickings in from him from the back. So you want your back three to be good under the high ball. And even if you could easily see Liam Williams play on the wing, and we can move on to wingers now. I'm very happy to put Stuart Ogg in that role because he can do so much. And I say the experience of being on 2 tours says a lot. And now he'll come into sort of his Lions prime on his last opportunity. So yeah, for me, Hogg at 15. But wings, so you've obviously got Liam Williams who chucked Daly in there.
The thing with those few is that I think Daly and Williams, if fit, will almost certainly be on the tour, if not only because they have the versatility to play wing and fullback and even Daly at centre. It's one of the things that with Lions, versatility really does play into your hands, and Daly's kind of the perfect one for that. So I think if he's fit, Daly will certainly be on the plane, but I don't think he starts in my team. I think one of the other big
23. You could see him as a 23.
Yeah. Could be very useful in that role. The other thing with Daly is he is quite a hard bastard. He does make his tackles, and that is going to be important against South Africa. But the other big one, I think, probably the one that comes to the forefront of my mind for wing, and we get another green lad in, is Jacob Stockdale.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. He's been so consistently high performing in the last few Six Nations. You might not have played it as much as me, but I've played quite a lot of fantasy Six Nations and World Cup for the last few years. Won the World Cup and Six Nations fantasy leagues for my work, I'll have you know. So know a little bit about my fantasy, and Stockdale is the first. Yeah. Doesn't really count because nobody else is really playing. They just made a team and left it, but I still won. But Stockdale is the first day on the team sheet. He's the top try scorer, top point scorer pretty much every single time. And he's just very good at finishing those tries. But another one that kind of plays into his hands in terms of the combating the South Africans is that, he's a big boy. He makes his tackles. So he's got to be there for me. And that obviously is good news for Irish fans and good news for diversity throughout the team, because we don't want it to be an English team, even if that's what we might kind of deep down want to select. And that's not what Gatland's going to select. So I think Gatland will like Stockdale. He fits into Gatland's mould of the big ball-carrying winger who is still pretty good in the air.
He's also good. He's got a reasonably good kicking game as well. I think there was a try against France 2 years ago, I think, where he's chipped over the top. Very tight game. It might have been France. I could be making this, whoever it was, but it was
I mean, I've never really seen it, just because he doesn't really need to. He tends to just bulldoze people anyway.
He's got real gas as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He kind of doesn't really use that weapon because he's got others that are more potent. But that is going to be important.
So yeah, it's definitely for me, Stockdale's in. I would say the honourable mention, and I'd love to see him on the tour. I don't know if he'll need to have a massive year for. I think he's at Edinburgh. Just double check before I tell you. But Blair King I'd quite like to see maybe get on the plane, as again he offers. Again, I hate the versatility tag, but he can play 15 and he can play on the wing. So maybe for him, maybe a good opportunity for him to get on the plane as a tourist and playing the midweek games, but. For me, the other wing berth, and again, they're very similar players, and you could argue that maybe you want a bit of like Cheslin Colby. Do you want to combat Cheslin Colby with Noel, or like a smaller sidesteppy winger? But for me, one of the best wingers, if not the best winger in the Northern Hemisphere, is Johnny May.
Yeah, well, I'm obviously slightly biased with this. I wasn't for a couple of years, but now I'm back again because he signed again for Gloucester.
Yeah.
But yeah, having watched Johnny May play a lot from when he first broke on the scene with Gloucester, he's changed his game a lot, and he's gone from a very good club player to being a genuine international contender. Now that he's gotten a bit bigger, he's better under the high ball. He does less of he hasn't done it for a few years now, but he was very much side to side when he first came on the scene.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be awesome for him as a Gloucester fan, but as an England fan, to see him on the tour. I think he should go on the tour. But for me, there's three of these English wingers in Johnny May, Jack Noel and Anthony Watson. I find them so hard to pick between a lot of the time. They're all so good. They offer slightly different things.
Yeah.
They're all very good, and I think you'd find it hard to leave any of them out of that touring side.
I think they all go. I think Jack Noel might be the only one that you might think they might not go. But again, he can offer the 13-15 thing.
And back row.
Yeah, of course. We obviously know how to do it at 7. Comment hashtag Jack Noel for line 7 below. I think Johnny May though is the real finisher, and I think Jack Noel in the Premiership is just unreal. Like when you see him play in that sort of level, he is just streaks ahead of some other players. Like just very quickly on Exeter, actually, it was quite interesting. They put out a thing on their Instagram about they were doing an inter-club game, like it was Whites versus their Black, and you could clearly tell from the photos that these teams weren't mixed. This was a full-on first versus seconds. And clearly it was, I think it was Jack Noel up against O'Flaherty, I think. But yeah, just in that sort of remit, Noel's class. He's obviously been on the Lions tour before. He knows how that works. And again, if you want to combat Cheslin Colby with Cheslin Colby, yeah, I think he's a great player for that. He's good in the tackle. Watson, you've got to maybe take into consideration the amount of rugby he's played over the last couple of years, and when Johnny May's on a hot streak and Jacob Stockdale's on that hot streak, but yeah, definitely we've seen what he can do in a Lions shirt again, Watson. So he's definitely going to be in the picture. But yeah, any of those 3 England wingers will make a absolute massive difference.
I think it completely depends on what they're like injury-wise, whether they've had any peaks or troughs in form. But on their day, fit, all 3 of them are quality. I already don't know who I'd pick. Maybe Watson on his day fit, because yes, he's not played a huge amount of rugby, but when he has come back and when he played his few games in the World Cup when he was on form, he's very, very difficult to beat. Again, not the most robust, not the best in the tackle. I'd say Johnny May is probably, and Jack Noel again, probably a little bit better in defence than Watson. Watson does offer a lot. But yeah, I think before this, I would have probably said Watson. But I think you made some good points, and I think I'd love, as a Gloucester fan, love to see Johnny May on that team sheet.
I'm very keen to. My 2 were before this podcast were May and Stockdale, because there's no point. Those guys, they're never going to get on the bench. They're not a 22 or a 23. There's no point, because they are wingers, plain and simple. Like, yeah, they played 15 for Leicester a couple of times. What was the point of that? I mean, you look at Leicester.
He did it a few times for Gloucester at the beginning of his career. It's not his position.
He's a winger. Like Jack Noel is a winger first and foremost, but he can play 15 if required, and he can play 13 if required. Is he going to be the best 13 at the world? No, he isn't. Is he the best 15 in the world? No, but he can play in those roles. That's why him and Watson would be fighting with Daly in that regard for that 23 shirt, because in your 23, if we do our what I'm going to call the Harry Berryman lines, which having 6 on the bench, which is I think is a way they may go still. They're not going to play. You're probably going to have a 9 and a very versatile back.
Yeah, and that's where Farrell is useful as well, because he can move from 10 to 12 if necessary. But yeah, those versatile backs do become very important when you're selecting Lions side. Which is why I think that you're going to have all 4 of those, essentially, you're all wingers, all 4 of those England wingers in that team, in the touring side. If it were me, anyway. I don't know who Gatland would edge towards. I don't know what preference he'd have, but Johnny May has proven to score tries at important times against the best teams. He scored against the All Blacks a few times. He knows how to do it. So
yeah, when he gassed poor old Conrad Smith when he left him for dead.
What a try that
was. We've been very English. I will say we're not just English. Though our team is predominantly English. But again, yes.
For that, like if we were doing this, we've had this conversation years gone by, and we would have had this conversation in 2013, and we didn't know each other then because we weren't at university yet. But all through the kind of last 3 years, whenever we talk about rugby, we aren't biased. Like we recognise when other teams are better. Just so happens to be at the moment, England are very good.
Yeah.
And they've got some very, very good players in their 23, let alone starting in their starting 15. And the other teams just seem to be slightly taking a back step this last year, 2 years. Because like a few years ago, you'd be saying Sexton, you'd be saying Murray, you'd be saying Halfpenny, you'd be saying whoever else.
I thought you were going to say James Hook then.
What? James Hook?
I thought you were going to say James Hook.
Right.
Mate, that's the subheading at the top.
Richard Hibbard.
Richard Hibbard.
But no, it just happens to be that at the moment England are the best, the highest performing, most consistently performing team in those 4 countries, I think, and I hope that will come to light when they finish the Six Nations games in the autumn, because I do think that we were still the best team, even though we lost a couple of games.
I know this seems like we're going round and round in circles for the winger, but I think we should definitely give him a mention. Whether he's in the line for the test team, he's certainly on the plane for me. Josh Adams, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think if you're picking between, again, he's a very similar player to May and Stockdale in that he's an out-and-out winger. When he was at Worcester, and I know he had to move back to Wales to play for Wales. Worcester would have been gutted when he left because he was phenomenal in that 3 years ago when he was in the Premiership. He's another one that he's very much like Johnny May. Can play 13, I'd say.
He really, really could be in that starting team because Gatland knows him and he knows what he's about, and he fits in his mould. Yeah, he's a very good player. He again was very good on the old fantasy team for Wales in the World Cup. I'd slightly forgotten about him, to be honest, and I feel bad about that because he genuinely could be in that starting team.
He's, for me, goes on the plane, and I did want to mention him. I'm a massive fan of him. His finishing ability is one of the best in the world, and definitely in the top 3 of your Sevu Reeses, your Johnny May, Cheslin, the best player in the world. No, Joe, not quite. Cheslin Colby's another discussion on another day. Yeah. Anyway, let's wrap that up then with the Lions team. So let's go through it again. So one more time: Mako, George, Sinclair Marrow, Alwyn Jones, Courtney Laws, Justin Tipperick, Billy Vanapola, Thomas Williams, Owen Farrell, Johnny May, Manu Tuolangi, Gary Ringrose, Jacob Stockdale, and Mr. Scotland, Stuart Hogg. We'll preview next Sunday a different 15, and we'll let you know what's going to come out in the week. As I say, looking ahead to next week's games, we've got the final round of Super Rugby R tier rubber. So it's the Hurricanes versus the Highlanders. So hopefully the Hurricanes can finish on strong, or the Highlanders might pit one. And then it's what was deemed earlier in Super Rugby was the Crunch Part 2 with the Crusaders versus the Blues. And then obviously in Super Rugby AU, the Force return from their bye week against the Rampant Tars, and it's the Reds versus the Rebels. We will be back on Wednesday, or it will probably come out on Thursday, but we're going to do a preview podcast, as we've mentioned before, about previewing the return of Premiership Rugby. And then on Sunday, we will also review those games, and a few of them in more detail than others. But we're basically going to preview the teams. We've put out on our Instagrams and Twitter about the 15s that potentially could start. That's just our opinion as well. And thank you very much, particularly to the Bath and Bristol fans that got on the back of those. It's really good. As I say, we really do want to see where this podcast can take us and grow it. So thank you again for your interactions and giving us a go. We really do appreciate any feedback you can offer us. So we'll see you on Wednesday for that. As I say, do follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter. All the links are in the Acast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, Joe will have put them in there as well. So do engage on that. And yeah, we'll see you on Wednesday and we'll see you on Sunday for then. Joe, enjoy Berkhamsted. I'll
enjoy France.
Hey. So this is a bit of after. This is what happens after the Rock and Roll podcast. We just straight away stop the recording and look at more rugby and chat more rugby. But we've just looked in our WhatsApp chat. Andre Pollard set to become Premier's highest played player. He's on the 26-year-old is currently on £700,000 at Montpellier, but he's reportedly going to be paid £1 million to play for Bath. Joe Tricky.
I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned it on this podcast, but I've certainly mentioned it in discussions with you guys. I visited Farley House last pre-season with school, and it is an amazing facility. So nice. Like, I would happily pay quite a lot of money to be able to live and work there. If you were to tell me I'm going to pay you £1 million, you get to come to Farley House and train every day and then go and play for Bath, how do you turn that down? You can't. That would be an amazing signing for Bath. That's the one thing they're really missing is a very good, world-class fly half. They've got quality in most other positions, most other areas of the pitch. If they were to do that, if they were to get him in, they would be very serious contenders if they can kind of get some momentum going.
Ben Spencer and Andre Pollard.
What a pair of signings that would be.
That's a combo. But again, the Bath, you've got Craig's got what's his name again? Who's the Bath chairman? Bruce Craig. Craig. Yeah. He's called Craig. A guy called Craig. He's got so much money, Mr. Bath, basically. And obviously they've had Burgess, they've had other world class players in there. Obviously, retired for them, but he's wanted the Premiership title for so long. That would be a huge, significant statement if they did get him.
Yeah. Oh, massive. And there's been chat about it for a little while, but we haven't had any kind of cold, hard evidence or kind of. I mean, there's not to say that this is cold, hard evidence and proof, but yeah, that's very, very believable.
I was just trying to look at who is the other guy they were linked with at the start of the year. Is it Sharks?
Oh yeah, Bosch.
Yeah, Cohen Bosch. That was it. Oh, that would have been lovely if they could have got him.
Matt. I think we're trying, and then he obviously decided to stay in South Africa.
But Andre Pollard, amazing signing. I'm going to put you on the spot. As I say, we're on Rugby Rock and Roll podcast after dark. Right, you've got Joe's a Gloucester fan. I'm an Irish fan, right? Joe, here's £1 million. You can buy anyone in the world, sign anyone to make Gloucester better. Go.
That's a very good question. I think Gloucester need £1 million for one player.
One player.
Just one player.
One player. It's a £1 million player. It's your Dan Carter at Racing 92 or Perpignan, where he was paid £1 million. Yeah, he was at £1 million at Racing, wasn't he?
I'd probably.
He's your Charles Piatow at Bristol.
That's
I
was about to say Burden Barrett, but I'm going to change my mind and go Richie Mwanga.
Oh, damn it. I thought Richie was going to look great in green.
Well, yeah, I mean, Gloucester do need a fly half. Cipriani's getting on a little bit now, and I think his effort is waning as he wasn't named in that England side. So we need a fly half or a centre. So for me, it'd either be Mwanga or Manu Tuolangi, I reckon. He's going to be an absolute steal for sale because they're not paying him £1 million.
What was it? Was Steve Diamond said in the week? I think he said something about he couldn't believe that he's got a player that actually kills people in training, like he'll tackle, like 3 players take to tackle him. Oh, you've nicked mine because that's exactly what I was going to do. Because Irish need a fly half. Oh God, we need a few others.
Who's Australian?
We
just sign the whole Aussie team because that's basically
our Aussie team, Aussie backline for that. Well, we've got both the Australian second rows in the world.
Yeah, only 2.
Only 2. Only good ones anyway. Come on. Oh, come on. Oh, who would I want? Who's good?
Well, you can have Andre Pollard.
I don't want Andre Pollard though. I like Andre Pollard, but I don't. Do you know what? The only person that's coming to mind is Josh Ioane. I'd pay Josh Ioane £1 million.
Josh Ioane?
No, I really like Josh Ioane. Who
is he £1 million? Owen Farrell.
No, Owen Farrell he couldn't cope with Irish, I don't think.
He'd walk in and go off.
He'd be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
No. Oh God. Who could I get? Oh, do you know what? Sevu Reece, £1,000,000.
Yeah.
Sevu Reece. Come on. Oh, or Will Jordan.
Jordan.
Will Jordan, come on. English qualified. Finley Christie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? No, actually, no. I'll make a generally serious point. Because at Irish, yeah, we do need a flyer. We've got Paddy Jackson in there. We've got Rona and Habitima are generally good centres in there. I love Albert Tuisui, the Fijian 8 that we've got, but he could play 6. Ardi Sarvea.
Yeah. Fair enough. He'd be exciting, wouldn't
he? Actually, on that, I'd have said a Hoskins Tutu, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
No, we're going around in circles. £1,000,000. I'm having Ardi Sarvea. He looked absolutely dreadful in that London Irish green kit. Yeah. But yeah, Ardi Sarvea, £1,000,000. There you go.
Nice.
Well, that wraps up Rock and Roll Podcast After Dark. This might go in the podcast. I have no idea, but we'll see. We just like talking about rugby. There you go. Andre come up to Bath. Ardi Sarvea to Irish for £1,000,000. That's a rumour. And Manu Tuolangi doesn't want to play for Sale anymore. He's going to play for Gloucester. You've heard it here first.